Hello there and thanks for joining me. I'm digital artist Aaron Rutten, and in this video I'm going to be testing the new digital art software called Leonardo. Leonardo is in its beta phase for Windows, and you can find it at getleonardo.com. Their mission is to create the world's best painting application. It has a swift workflow, blazing speed, handy tools, which this actually looks really cool. I could have used this on the painting I was working on yesterday. Infinite canvas, which is nice, beautiful brushes, we shall see, tablet ready, that's always good, and a lot more to come. So I take it it's not a complete application, but it's complete enough to where we can try it. So I've already gone ahead and downloaded it, but I haven't yet installed it. This will be my very first time testing it. Let's go ahead and install, and let's launch it. Alright, so you have to create an account in order to use it, but that's probably because it's a trial version. So upon loading it up, I can see it's a very minimalist interface. There's just a few small bars that aren't too intrusive, and a lot of room for the canvas. So we have our tool, our line, our brush, our options. So let's click on tool, line. Guess we can smooth out the line. We can do different kinds of shapes. There's different kinds of brushes. There's ink, pencil, marker, and so on. And then there's options where we can adjust each of the parameters for each of the brushes. And a color wheel. Hopefully that's something that we can keep on screen. Let's see, we can't dock it, but we can put it over here. That's good. Let's check out layers too. We can break off layers. That's nice and intuitive. Doesn't seem like we can expand the layers palette though. So let's just put our color and our layers over here. Off to a good start so far. Let's do a little drawing. The ink is nice and smooth, pretty quick. Not a whole lot of lag or anything like that. Let's check out smooth. And let's see if it smooths it out. We can change the smoothing here, so let's just crank that up to 99. And let's see, 50 is as far as it can go. So it has the pulled string just like Photoshop does, which is odd because that just came out in Photoshop. I think you could probably do that in that app called Lazy Mizumi too. Well, that's a nice feature for smoothing. So let's go ahead and just put it back to normal. You can see this being really nice for inking. It's a nice opaque brush. It tapers off well. It responds really well to my pen pressure. I'm gonna do Control A and then delete. Those shortcuts work. That's always good. I hate when shortcuts are different across applications. Let's try some of the other brushes. Let's see what pencil looks like. Now this was brought to my attention by a fellow YouTube artist demoing it, Gil Robles. So thanks Gil for pointing this out, because I saw you working with the pencil and I was really impressed with how that looked. So trying it out for myself, I have to say I really do like the way the pencil responds. It has a nice, appropriate, natural looking amount of grain, and it responds to opacity pretty well. I don't know that pen tilt works. It doesn't seem like it does, so rotating the angle of my pen doesn't seem to make a difference on the line. Not a big deal because I don't really shade that way. Let's delete that. Let's take a look at some of the other brushes. Let's try marker. In my experience, markers never really look that great, and it seems like that's the case here too. In fact, these don't even seem to really build up as I would expect them to in intensity. So markers, Calligraphy, can't say I do a whole lot of calligraphy. There's your calligraphy brush. Those have been around since the beginning of time. Jagged brush, that's a nice jagged brush. I like that. That could be nice for doing some more organic looking ink lines. So I like the jagged brush. Let's try the round brush. Nice round brush. I can't see how that's really very much different from the default brush. There's a flat brush. Pen pressure works all right. Looks like it's just kind of your standard dab for the brush, so nothing all that impressive there. Let's see how it blends color together. Can't say I'm all that impressed with that aspect of it. Let's go to airbrush. Always nice to have an airbrush. Let's make a big airbrush and see how it performs, because I use the airbrush a lot. Airbrush works pretty well. Then if we look at the different options for each brush, a limited amount of options, but kind of what you'd expect there. Let's see the round brush. So you can play with the hardness and softness. One thing that's always really important is blenders. I'm going to assume that this is a blender. Let's go back a few steps here. So this is kind of a smudgy, blurry blender. There's also a flat smudge, which is a little more oily. And then there's your standard blur. So minimal amount of blenders, but hey, at least it has blenders. I can't say that for all art applications. So now let's go ahead and do this. Let's test by creating a new layer. How do we do that? How do we create a new layer? It shouldn't be that difficult. That's the plus button. There we go. New layer. So I'm going to try putting down some paint using the brush, and let's use the flat brush. And let's pick a color we can see against these other colors. Let's put down some green and maybe some blue. Let's go back to that blender and let's try flat smudge and let's see how it works on transparent pixels. Looks like it smudges pretty well, as I would expect it to. It's not creating any kind of weird fringe. I can pull the paint out and I can push it back in, which is always nice when you're blending. Sometimes it's a one-way street. So blenders actually seem to work all right. It'd be nice if there were more options, but I'm sure you can go in and you can customize these quite a bit more to get more results. I'm going to go ahead and try the Wacom Art Pen, which senses rotation, and we'll see if that senses rotation. I'm doing that because I see that the dab is kind of at an angle, and that makes me think that it could be rotated, but it doesn't seem like it can, so skip that. Let's see what else we have. We have an eraser, which we can use, and we can of course change that to hard and soft. We can clear everything on a layer or a selection. That's always nice. Kind of a freaky skull thing there for the clear. We got our dropper. Options for the dropper. We can sample all layers or we can sample a single layer. That's always nice. Sample opacity. That's nice too. I don't see anything to change the scale of the sampling diameter, so that would be something to include. We can move stuff, so let's delete that extra layer. So we can move with the move tool, we can nudge it with these buttons up here. That's kind of nice, but you can also use your keyboard. So lasso tool, got our normal and our polygonal lasso. We have add and subtract, so that's pretty standard there. We can make a selection, and we can use the move tool to move that stuff around. We can hopefully transform it to, let's see if we can figure out how to do that. Free transform. But that seems to work pretty well. We can lock aspect ratio. And we have our marquee and our ellipse selection tools. Those can be drawn from a center axis. That's always good. And we have our gradient tool. We can do color to transparent, or we can use gradients as an eraser. We have basically linear and radial. Must have a framed canvas or a selection to use a gradient. I guess that's because this is an infinite canvas. So that means that you can just keep going and going and going forever. The canvas has no end. So what we have to do to use the gradient is make a selection, and then we can fill with the gradient. I have color to transparent selected. I see, you pull the gradient out like that. That's kind of cool. There aren't any options as far as I can tell for adding multiple colors to the gradient. So you only get one color at a time. We can rotate the canvas. That's always good. And we can pan it. I don't see any options for zooming over here, but it looks like they're up here, so we can zoom out and zoom in. Pretty large increments for the zoom. We can change our brush size by dragging on this little icon here. And let's see if we go back to the brush, if we're able to change our brush size with any kind of shortcuts. I used the bracket keys earlier, that worked pretty well. Shift locks the axis. There's no diagonal axis. I'm not able to find a combination of the standard keyboard shortcuts to make the brush smaller with a keyboard command other than the bracket keys, so that's a little disappointing. Let's see what some of the other options are. I want to try to find that circle thing that I saw in their demo. So I'm assuming I'm going to have to go to the line, draw an ellipse. Let's see, perspective. There we go. So we can draw some perspective guides. This is going to take a little getting used to. You can kind of see that the guides come off of your brush, and when you start painting, you can actually see exactly where they're going to go. That's kind of interesting. Isometric drawing mode is kind of cool too. That way you can draw kind of semi-3D looking things. I'm going to go ahead and just clear all this. This is one big mess, so you can see it better. So isometric is, what you see sometimes in video games where there's a point of view that's kind of like this, and then you have, houses and things, and everything is kind of drawn like that so that it's very easy to draw in perspective, because the perspective is kind of fixed. So that's an interesting mode. I like that. Still haven't figured out how to do the ellipse in perspective. Maybe it has to be transformed. It looks like standard transformation. Let's see what prop does. Props, locking it. There we go. There's the option for it. Ellipse in 3D. Now we can do the ellipse in 3D. See, I was drawing a car earlier yesterday, and I was trying to do the wheels for the car in perspective while still being able to draw a perfect circle. And I was trying to do that in Corel Painter, and I did not have this option. So that would have been really nice to be able to do this, because now I can just simply draw my circle like that in perspective. And then I can make some adjustments to it like that if I want another circle inside of it. So that is actually a pretty cool feature. I would have really liked to have had that. Let's see if we can scale the... So we can't really scale the whole thing down, unfortunately. That would be nice if you could just do a standard scale while it's still in perspective. So I have to say, this is probably one of the coolest features I've seen so far in this application. But this gives you nice clean lines without being distorted from having been transformed. So this could be the way to go. I see this as being very handy. Let's take a look at some of the other stuff we can do in the menus. Let's go ahead and do save as, and let's see what our options are for saving. There's the native Leo file format, which I'm assuming probably preserves some sort of proprietary data. If we want to save it as a standard file format, we probably go to export. Then it wants to know where to export it. I'm guessing the Leo file format saves your infinite canvas. This makes you pick a specific area that you want to cut out of that infinite canvas, and then you choose what the dimensions you want are going to be. Options, JPEG, quality. Hopefully JPEG isn't the only format we can save as. No, it's not. We can do JPEG, bitmap, ping, targa, TIFF. All pretty standard. I'm disappointed that I don't see Photoshop PSD on here. Autosave, that's always good. Auto open last, that's kind of an interesting feature. Under the edit menu, we have our standard edit commands. No paste in place. I wonder if it does paste in place from where it cuts from. Let's see. I'm going to select just an area here. Let's cut it, let's paste it, and it pastes back into place. That's always good. Let's try cutting it, moving the canvas, and then pasting, and still pastes in place. So most of the time when I'm cutting and pasting, I want the paste to go right back where it came from. So you get bonus points for that. There's fill, clear, crop, fit on screen. I don't know what expose is. Show proofing. So that's the color proofing. You can choose different modes for your color to make sure that your prints come out accurately. You can flip horizontal very easily with the F key. That's a nice handy shortcut. We can rotate left, we can rotate right, we can go full screen mode, which hides all of the palettes that we haven't docked. I don't think you can dock these. I think they're just kind of chilling there, but that's nice. And then if you hover, you get your palettes back. Very intuitive. I'm going to assume escape brings you back. Nope. So I guess to get back out of full screen mode, we have to go back to view. F11 is the shortcut. So F11, there we go. Turn that on and off. We can adjust the brightness and exposure, hue and saturation, the color balance. We can colorize it. Those are very handy shortcuts to have for editing your colors. We already looked at free transforming, flipping horizontally and vertically. One thing that would be nice in the free transform mode is to be able to warp and distort things using perspective and distortion. You can desaturate, invert channels, copy value to alpha inverted. Set a canvas frame size, so I believe that's a way to just no longer make it an infinite canvas. So we choose a frame, that's going to be our canvas, and then there we go, we've automatically cropped it, it's no longer an infinite canvas. You can select all, select current layer. Under paint, we can make our brush bigger or smaller with these bracket key shortcuts. We can swap colors. We can make our colors darker, brighter, grayer, pure. Let's try that. That looks fun. Let's see. That's Q, W, A, and S. So let's pick a color. Let's go with this red. Let's switch our brush to flat brush. Let's put down a little red. Let's try the shortcut for darker. That's Alt Q. So I hit Alt Q and paint, Alt Q and paint, Alt Q and paint, and it's making my color darker. That's kind of nice if you're too lazy to just click up here and change your color. Let's try brighter with Alt W. So that's adding saturation and lightness a bit. Let's try grayer, which is Alt A, so that's going to remove saturation. So if you look in the color picker, you can see kind of what it's doing. The grayer is just moving it left to desaturate it. Darker is going to go down and left. Brighter is going to go up and right. Pure, I'm assuming, is probably going to be the opposite of a grayer. So let's try Alt S. And indeed, it is just adding saturation, and it's moving the color picker icon here towards the right to saturate it. Now, one thing I do notice, I should have pointed this out earlier, it has the triangle for the color picker with value on the vertical axis, saturation on the horizontal axis, and then the hue ring, and that's by far my favorite color wheel model, so I like that we have that. I don't see any sliders for HSV, I don't see any way to add swatches or anything like that. Not a deal breaker. You can turn on symmetry painting, and we can move the plane. I don't see a way to make it more than just a bilateral symmetry. So you can't divide it, do kaleidoscope mode as far as I know. Let's see. So that's the paint panel. Let's look at the panel. We can show the console. Wow. I don't think I'm going to be using that. Let's hide the console. We can show our line options. So we can basically break out all of these panels if we want to. Performance. We can see how it's performing. Let's try doing some painting here, and let's see if we can lower the FPS or get it to do something. Let's use a really big brush, really big blender. And it's interesting, it seems to kind of make the screen more blocky while you're blending. So that's kind of odd. Let's try this with a high resolution canvas. I'm going to go ahead and go to New. I'm going to go to Canvas Frame Size. And let's make this a reasonably large canvas. Let's say 49 by... Oh, we have a maximum canvas size. So maybe what we want to do is we want to go to Infinite Canvas. Put that back on. And we want to zoom out quite a bit. Let's try putting down some paint again. And then let's go to our panel, let's show performance. Let's get our blender, use our big blender. And it's working reasonably well with a big brush. Not very much lag. Let's go back to our brush, let's see how big of an airbrush we can make. I think that's a pretty quick speed, not a whole lot of lag there. And we can see in the performance what it's doing. It's not using very much memory, not using very much CPU. So we can go ahead and close that. It's kind of a nice little feature. Tool extensions. So we can see, I guess, some other little tools here. Let's look under setting. We can change the user interface size. That is a nice option. We can make our interface smaller. Let's go ahead and restart Leonardo to see that. Let's go ahead and reopen Leonardo. The interface does not seem much smaller to me, so let's do a more drastic change. Let's try 250, and that's definitely a lot bigger. So if your buttons are much too small to see, you can make them bigger, or if you want to save more space on your screen, you can make them smaller. This is way too big, so I'm going to put that back down to 100. Let's look under Settings, Window Opacity. We can change the opacity of the window if we wanted to be able to see underneath to perhaps a drawing that we would draw on top of. That's kind of an interesting feature. I might find that useful for something. Stylus response, we can control the pressure gain, so we can basically calibrate the pressure sensitivity. Stylus mapping, we can auto-detect which mode is best. We can force pen or mouse mode. So hopefully that makes your stylus more compatible. Let's check out the brush cursor. Let's actually switch to a brush and draw a little bit. So right now we just have the dot for the cursor. We can also have a brush, an arrow across, or none. There's the brush. And we don't need to look at all the rest. You probably have a pretty good idea of what that is. You can have a different icon for erase and smudge. We can hide the cursor while painting. Multi-touch. So one finger works with the current tool. 2 fingers will pinch, zoom, and rotate, and we can change those options. So I'm going to go ahead and turn my touch on. I'm rotating pretty fluidly here and zooming. It's actually working pretty well. So I would say that the response for this is actually pretty nice. It kind of floats a little bit when you release it. You can see it kind of bounce there. So very, very responsive. I would say probably one of the most responsive digital art apps I have used. Not very buggy. Let's try painting a bit and rotate, paint a little more, rotate while holding the pen. Still not an issue. The pen is not interfering with the screen. I'm going to put my hand on the screen and I'm going to draw. And my hand is not interfering at all. So I would say 5 out of 5 stars for the touch. The touch is very nice. A lot of these other more popular art applications could really learn from this experience here, because this is how touch should work. There's also a little indicator up there showing the bearing of the canvas. That's really nice, so that you have an idea of where your canvas is. There's the wheel and dial, which I'm assuming is for the Surface dial, and then the Wacom remote. I'm not going to really worry about that. There's a zoom limit, and there's left-handed mode if you're left-handed. Let's see what that does. That just puts everything over on the left-hand side. And then, of course, there's the help menu, which you can set the shortcuts. There's instructional videos and lots of other things. Here's a list of all the shortcuts. So here's the one for changing the brush size. So this is kind of interesting. If you hold D, you change the diameter of the brush by dragging left or right. And if you hold A, you change the rotation. Now you're not going to see it on this brush here, but if I switch to the flat brush, I make it bigger, and I hold A, I can change the rotation of the dab. That's pretty handy. So I'm just doodling a little quick drawing here just to kind of get a feel for how this is actually going to work for actual drawing. One thing I am noticing is that my brush tip is a little bit off of my brush cursor. So when I'm trying to draw this pupil here, it's off center from where I'm actually drawing with my pen. So that is not good. Let's say the accuracy is a little bit off. That makes it very hard to draw accurately, and I didn't notice that because I was using bigger brushes and not really trying to draw anything earlier. So, maybe that's something that I can recalibrate, but is definitely way off. But other than that, I think it's looking pretty good as far as the look that I'm able to get with the pencil. I accidentally moved my symmetry plane. That's not good. Hopefully it can be locked or hidden. So we can go ahead and lock it. As dots get smaller, that's always good. Hopefully my symmetry is not too far off now. Now, one critique I do have is that I can flip my pen over to get the eraser, but then the problem with that is that the eraser does not have the same quality of grain as the pencil does. So it looks very digital when I erase. And when you're drawing with pencil, you're going to be erasing a lot, so that is kind of disappointing. This pencil does have a lot of expressiveness, so it's very easy to vary the opacity. It looks a lot like a pencil. It's definitely one of the better digital pencils that I've used. So this is just a quick doodle of a face for demonstration's sake, just to give you an idea of what you can do with this application. But again, the things that I feel are holding this experience back are the fact that the eraser does not match the grain of the pencil when you erase, and that the pen tip does not exactly line up with your brush stroke when you're painting. And then last but not least, let's talk about price. How much does this thing cost, and is it worth buying? It looks like it's $39 if you buy it during the beta phase. So that means that if you help beta test it, you can get it for cheaper, but it will eventually be $79, and who knows if they'll keep raising the price of it or not. That's a pretty reasonable price for a digital painting application. It's definitely on the lower end. I feel like there's some other things out there that you can get, such as Art Rage and Rebel, that are going to be right around that price, that offer a little bit more. But I think that's a pretty fair price for getting in on the beta. You get free automatic updates during the beta and version 1. You can use it on multiple devices. It's a one-time payment, no subscription fees or anything like that, etc. So I know I didn't cover everything here. There's probably some hidden gems that I don't know about, but that should give you a pretty good overview of how the Leonardo app works. It's pretty low profile. It has some very promising features. I really like that you can draw the circles in perspective. That's really awesome. It's nice that you can shift colors around and things like that. Performance-wise, it seems to work pretty well, although it is lacking some things like more character to the brushes to help them look more organic. Definitely needs more randomization. I'd like to see some color variability, and the pencil looks really good, I will say that, and the inking brushes work all right, but it's really kind of lacking in the oil painting or painting media category. But it's off to a good start. I know it's still in the beta phase. Definitely download it and check it out if you're interested. And if I get another version of this with some more features, I'll go ahead and do a follow-up video showing you that. If you found this information helpful, take a quick second to like this video. And if you're new to my channel, I'd love to have you subscribe. I have a lot more digital art videos like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.